Hi, welcome to Overlanding from home. My name is Anton. I'm an avid overlander, lover of nature, and humanitarian by heart. The past while, I've always been interested in the outdoors, and I want to hear about other people's experiences and their rigs. Yes, the big rigs, the small rigs, everything they've done to design them and how they plan it. I hope you enjoy listening. Let's find out who today's guest is. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks again for signing in. I've been seeing that my followers are picking up more in the US and South Africa, which is fantastic. Thank you. And Australia, funny enough, which is great. Some awesome European guys are popping up. So today, again, I don't really need to reintroduce Paul Marsh. He is a guru. If you haven't heard of him, please check the social media links. And today we are on episode 2. Is that right, Paul? We did our first one on about a few other subjects.
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Anton. It's from a cold, wintry Cape Town, and some parts of the world enjoying summer. But hey, we need winter and we need the rain.
That's very true. I was chatting briefly yesterday with a friend of mine, Jamal from QH Overland, and he was doing a video about something around his Defender. And he said it was so hot that the camera turned off. So
you don't always get that.
No. We're on the entire opposite side of that scale. I've seen some pictures of the snow that's come up in the Clankaroo. So I'm kind of excited, but not really, considering we're stuck at home.
So what are we going to share today with our listeners?
So today I think is going to be very cool. I'm very excited. I think two of the main points or subjects that I'd like to bring up is navigation options and Waze. Waze and Means. I don't mean Waze as an app. And another main one would be Paul Marsh's overlanding vehicles. And I think what we can do is start off with navigation, because it's a very big subject. And every country and every region has its own different options. And I've got a few things on this subject, but I think the one thing to commonly start off with, which is what everyone looks at, everyone looks at, is your if you're someone new within the industry, is Garmin and is TomTom even worthwhile looking into when it comes to off-road mapping? I don't even know.
You know, Anton, I think there are a good number of systems available. I mean, in the earlier days, TomTom, Magellan, Garmin, all are very good units that you can use for navigation. Yeah. It really came around where like in Southern Africa, especially, Garmin has the marketing platform, and they've superseded a lot of the other brands just because of sheer volume and marketing. So it doesn't knock the other brands at all. I know there's some amazing brands out there, but I think, let's look at what we use and what's available. And I think navigation for me is not just about a GPS. I think that's where people really get sort of mistaken and misled. Navigation a lot of the time needs to actually culminate around how are you going to find your way to where you're going.
Yeah.
And where are you going? So mostly in Southern Africa, where we are, Garmin has the dominant sort of market lead, largely because of how it's placed itself in the market.
Sorry, Paul, I just want to ask you, are you saying as a device or as a map? Because I think if we're going to dig into this, we need to be a little bit more technical, I guess, because, you can always get a device, but not necessarily use that operating, that mapping system. So what I mean.
That's a good point. Very good point. These days, I think devices are there in a number of realms. People use a bigger screen to look at their maps. Maybe it's an iPad. Maybe it's a navigator. And I think really what you're looking at when you're looking at navigation is what am I comfortable with using? Okay, that's going to give me the information I need. Because all too often I've watched people buy very expensive units which they believe are going to give them everything they need. And they're quite complex, some of them, and they take a bit of getting used to. Whereas, nowadays I think things are becoming also simpler and simpler in some aspects. If I look at some of the apps you can get, Tracks for Africa is a great application, which I've supported for many years. And I think, you know too well that they do a combination of very good mapping, paper maps, very good Tracks for Africa waypointing system, which is crowdsourced, which is fantastic. And they've got a lovely map book, which covers a lot of Africa. So when we're looking at that in perspective, I always like to give a balanced approach to it, because I think you can go down a very focused route, which is, let's say, the navigation platform, without looking at the big picture. So big picture, why would I choose, let's say, the Tracks for Africa maps for Africa? I like the fact that they give great times and for their distances. So they've taken a measured average of people who've driven that road with the conditions. So it's not specific to one person's driving style. And what they've done is they've actually taken that average and put it in there and say, if you drive from this point to this point, this is going to be the time it's going to take you. And I don't know, you must have used them as well. I find that really valuable when you're planning, because Google Maps has a great value, but I've always found the timings in Africa have never been accurate for our clients when you're trying to give them estimated times between 2 points.
It's what you've said now is very true. So that on the hard copy of Tracks for Africa is gold, because exactly as you've said, you have distance, but then look at the time, and people don't really know that. It's not. I don't know if Tracks for Africa are spending enough time explaining that to people that they understand the numbers within a map. I mean, I've done a lot of mapping myself, and I will not travel anywhere without a hard copy of the map. And in certain countries, I will buy a map in that country and not outside of the country, because
that's a very good point. Because I used to, as I traveled up to Africa, there were. I remember the BP map of Tanzania being really a good map. So they were like gold dust, So you try and get a map of that country. So absolutely, maps have their place. And I think for a lot of people, when you're approaching something new like overland travel and you haven't been immersed in it, and people only talk about the device that's going to give you a map on it, which is a small screen, it has its place. Absolutely, don't get me wrong. I think one of the big key values for any navigation system, or GPS as we're going to put it, for me is the safety aspect. You can get through a country without a GPS. You can take a good basic map. You can stop and ask people, and you will travel around very successfully. Where it really stands out for me is when you have an incident and someone's got to find you, and you can then give them the coordinates of exactly where you are. That's the true value of it. For me, I've used it on rallies and expeditions when people have broken down or had accidents, and we've got to try and work out how far are we from them. If I'm traveling, the doctor and I are traveling together, then it's a case of how quickly we can get there and what are we going to do while we're getting there. Now we can make an informed decision. So that for me around the safety element. And the other safety element is also knowing when you're traveling, how far it is to a place, and if you had to drive where, you don't want to drive at night, but if you had to, you're much safer following a navigation system that's going to take you exactly to that place, because you're sure to arrive at that point. So it's got specific uses, which I think are good for people to know. There are a lot of very good apps that you can download. Maps.me is a great resource. Yes. I'm sure you use that. And Pocket Earth is another one. So there's enormous amounts of mapping apps available. People who take maps, digitize them, and use them on different, GPSs and visual aids like the iPads and notebooks and computers. So they all have that place. But I think what really is missed a lot is about understanding how to navigate more than just using that. Because I think you often find when you're traveling in a country, there's you don't want to be scared about taking the road less traveled. And I think that's the beauty of it. You want to go and look, so can we drive this road? And how is it going to look? And sometimes people I've known who've just driven a road, got themselves to a place where they're not sure of, and then take me back to my campsite.
Yeah.
And you must have found that in the bush when you're driving around Botswana, and that you can totally get lost on these little tracks. And you look and you think, where's my campsite? So that's when people rely heavily on a device. But I think it's also good to be aware of which side is the sun and which direction am I going.
I grew up in the Drakensberg, Paul, and my wife firmly believes I was brought up by wolves in a forest, and I look at it. To me, I will at any time know where north is, and that immediately gives me a good sense of direction.
Exactly, and that's a very, very good thing to get to know and understand. It's also being able to use a compass. So I always carry, and I would encourage people to carry a compass. Compass, you can take your map away from the vehicle, away from where a compass will be influenced by anything magnetic, and you can put it down on the map, and you can go, where am I going if you can't figure out exactly? So, always have plan B, because a device can break, it can let you down, and then you're going, oh my God, how do I get around and where do I go? And I firmly believe that the navigation element of travel should be encompassed around more than just looking and using a device that's going to give you, a lot of information. It should be around using the maps. It should be around talking to people, being aware of your environment. And that way, I believe you get a much more richer experience in finding, if we use that word as opposed to finding your way around remote places.
I completely agree. So, I have a scenario last year, and this is a true story, is on my humanitarian trip. We were heading around the Mbababe region from Gundog. What is it?
It's some remote place that you can't remember.
Exactly, and there's three things here. Number one is people always look at a path and they think, oh, but this is a road or a walk that I can take. And it's not. It's an animal path. If you look at elephants and your normal buck and lions and all of that, they always take the same path.
They have their own natural.
Exactly. So,
and and I think that's like you say, that's an awareness when you're in the bush, and you can be mistaken for driving on some of those paths, And I think what's really opened up remote places is people are sharing information. So information is being shared very generously. And I think that for me is very important. And I would always encourage people, I'd say, if you're going to travel, invest in really good maps. Look at what detail is on the maps when you're going to buy them. Map Studio does a very good job of putting a lot of very good information together as well. And they have some great booklets and resources that you can get. There's amazing resources that you can pick up off the internet. And so I will often go, before I go on an area, I'll go and download different, sometimes they're small localized maps that someone's put together for a specific area, and that's useful. And then I'll do the preparation on the sort of trip before I go, as well as having a route. And I never like to be too structured, because I think it's quite fun to go and explore and be adventurous and take the road that feels good and looks good. And maybe someone you spoke to in a cafe says, you know what, this is really quite a nice route, go and explore it. So be open to that as well, and then navigate your way back. So yes, it is a very broad topic, and I think you can go into a lot of detail. And I know, like in countries, and you and I were speaking earlier, like in Australia, you've got companies who've dedicated, HEMA is one of them in Australia. They've made fantastic mapping and great devices made by HEMA that give you all the information.
I've never used a HEMA. I've looked at a number of at navigation options, and I actually got a very good idea. It's not mine. I got it from Johan from Trucks from Africa, where I was looking at the Overlander from Garmin, and it's a great device. It's sturdy and strong, but it didn't really do what I wanted it to do, in the sense that it is a lockdown device and it only offers Garmin. And I have a big trust problem when it comes to some of these apps. Not necessarily Garmin. I talk about all of them because certain devices or most devices, because they're online, they'll just draw a line that someone else has been in. And we got lost last year on a proper path, heading down towards Sankuyo. And what did I do? Pulled out a hardcover map, put it, and I have a photo of this, put it on the bonnet, and there we were, four guys looking at a map, working out, okay, hang on a minute, this is where we are right now, and this is where we need to be, but this road doesn't really exist. But on the online systems, it's there, it's fine, just keep driving it. And that to me is scary.
So, it is, and I think also you'll find in certain areas, roads change. Roads do move, and then how updated are the maps is also a question. So it's to your point, I think, taking a specific system and saying you have a lot available at your resource, and some of it's pretty freely available and some of it you don't pay a lot for. I think Tracks for Africa is fantastic value for money. I think the mapping you can buy in different countries in America will have also very good mapping of places you can go to, and people have put a lot of time and effort into that. So, it is worth always exploring what are the resources that are available, okay? And could I look across a couple of platforms? So if I'm taking, you spoke about the Overlander, and if I'm looking at a device to choose for my vehicle that I'm going to put in, and maybe it's a Garmin GPS that I'm going to put. First of all, I want to say that I would look at the size of screen. If I'm wearing glasses, it's quite annoying to put glasses on and off to look at a screen. So that's something that's a consideration for me. The other thing is the ease of use. Okay, so while the guy is driving and he's the navigation passion and expert, his wife traveling with him maybe needs to be doing the navigation or helping with it. So it's got to be something you both can use between you and both understand it from a safety point of view. From you don't always want to be able to, while you're driving, you're trying to find a place to stay or a campsite, have to stop to do it because you're better at it than maybe your wife is. So it's good to share that between you so you're both comfortable with using it, and especially in an incident where you've got to locate where are you at that point, and then most devices can give you that
very, very true.
And the other thing is fixing it to the actual vehicle. A lot of the units come with, I think, quite a poor suction mount to the windscreen, and more often than not they end up falling off all the time. So I use ram mounts as one of the things to suction to the windscreen. So it's important to know that this device, while it's sitting on the dash, in an accident where you roll your car, potentially can give you a lot of injury. And I think that's with anything we look at when we're using stuff around the vehicle, So that's just sidebar on that type of thing, which for me is very important. And understanding if you're traveling in a group that you've set up GPSs correctly, that you both understand. If you get lost, you know how to find the other person. And so that becomes a responsibility when you're traveling in a group, that everyone has an understanding of how we're going to navigate and what we're going to use and what are the parameters. So it's discussed beforehand and not afterwards when you're in a situation and you're trying to find someone in an emergency and the information they've given you isn't right because either they don't know how to use their unit or it's not set up properly. There's lots of issues there. So I think that's, just to probably summarize in a way, I think navigation is a big picture for people to look at. And if most people travel with these days with a phone, an iPad or a laptop and a device, so you've got the ability to have navigation on more than one device.
Yes.
So that's quite good. And don't take away a beautiful old map. It can be really fun to sit around and chat and discuss routes.
Sitting on a fire doing that is fantastic. I have a complete set of maps in my vehicle that I've tracked. I've actually written and lined all the roads that I've done on it. So I have a full picture of where I've done, and where I'm going.
It's lovely. That.
My office has a complete, huge map of Africa that's about 7 feet high and about 6 feet wide. And then I've got another 2 maps on the other side of me where I track where I go for my humanitarian work, and this is part of it, is that some areas that I go, people have to go and ping and send me what their lat long is so that I can use it, and put it down because there aren't roads to get there. So they can.
So that's very specific. Like you're saying, it's a very specific need that you have, and I think that's where a lot of these topics go down a sort of rabbit hole, if I can use that expression, where it becomes ultra specific, and it can be almost daunting for people getting into the the way of travel. And that's why I try and simplify it. For me, it's all about simplicity. How can it be simple? How can I make it almost bomb-proof that people are going to find their way home again? They're going to find their way back. And that's where it's important to look at the bigger picture of everything. So, it's I love the having those big maps. I glued all the Michelin maps together years and years ago and stuck it onto a big piece of wood. And it's just lovely to have maps. In fact, what I encourage people to do is when you're traveling, let's say on a big trip, you're doing a big overland trip, is to actually have a map of where you're traveling. So if it's Africa, and stick it on your door, okay, and just trace your route through it. And the valuable sort of option for that is when you stop at roadblocks or you stop at a border or someone comes across you, it actually is a great talking point. Many a roadblock I've leant out the window and I've discussed the map on my door with whoever's stopping me. And we have an opportunity to engage. And sometimes you'd be surprised when they go, you know what, have you actually seen this place? So it's just a lovely way to engage with people. So,
I do agree. I think it's becoming a little bit more of a lost art, as there's some techie people out there that prefer to, map everything online. I think it's very lost.
It's a balance. I think the what's online is massively valuable. And I wouldn't take that away from anyone. There's great work that's been done online, and that is where it's going. Don't kid yourself. But I do think that it's a balanced approach of what we can use.
Very true.
So fantastic.
All right,
great. Now you wanted to know about vehicles.
I do, and I think we have 5 more minutes, and I don't think it'll take us very long. But obviously, if none of you know, Paul's travelled extensively and some fantastic routes around certain areas of the world and the globe, and you've clearly had a variety of vehicles. So, can you give us a brief breakdown of how many overlanding vehicles you've done that you've kitted yourself for your own trips, and which one to you really sinks home and leaves a very big hole in your heart that you don't have it anymore?
I think every vehicle I've owned, when you sell it on or you move it on, it's a part of you goes with the vehicle. Because any vehicle, and I've owned maybe about 8 or 9 different overland vehicles that I've built up. But realistically, each one of them has been a part of my life, a chapter in my life. And I think with most people, you find that in your life, in that chapter, those memories are created using that vehicle. So one of my first trips through Africa, I took an old Hilux, and that had an 18R engine. So it was an old 1980s something Hilux, and stripped it down to nothing, right down to the chassis. And then I put a petrol engine in with a 22R engine. And at that time, you couldn't get a lot. Land Rovers were great. They were difficult to get hold of. They were expensive. But this Hilux actually belonged to a friend of mine. And I looked at him one day and I said, I will be driving your Hilux to Africa one day. So when I acquired the vehicle, it didn't go down too well because his wife brought it in. His wife brought it in for a service, and it had a problem with the clutch, and I think it was a lot of things, and it had broken down the one day, and I got it towed in, and I said to her, I've got a lovely Golf GTI for you, but I'm going to phone your husband and thank him for the vehicle he's just given me.
I
won't
can
repeat
imagine
what he said. The long and the short is I took the vehicle, and that vehicle, when it came to selling it, I actually turned 3 people down to buy it because I didn't think they were worthy of owning it. They didn't drive it well when they looked at it. They didn't have the sort of approach I wanted someone to really value what had gone into that vehicle and what it meant to me. And the couple who eventually bought it loved it and cherished it and drove it all around Botswana, and it meant a lot to me. So, the different vehicles have, as I said, some of them have driven across continents with me. Some of them have been to some really remote places. But each one has had a special place. I've owned Discoveries, Land Rover, early 300 TDI Land Rover Discovery. I did a lot of travel in that. I loved the vehicle. It was, every trip it came back from, let's say, driving across a continent, we did loads of work on it, but it was really good to me. And I think I had 2 incidents where I had problems on the car. But I put a lot of time and effort into it. So it was really a lovely vehicle. It was a nice size vehicle. My ex-wife loved driving it. She really enjoyed it, and she found it was a nice, balanced vehicle. And, I've driven Defenders across Africa, across South America, and they were also beautiful. I had a lovely hardtop, and drove that down through South America, and that belonged to a friend of mine. And he was really kind enough. He wanted to travel South America, so we did a deal. I drove it down, and he drove it back up, and it was lovely.
That is very cool.
So, I have been really fortunate to drive a lot of different vehicles on expedition across most of the range of what's on offer. And if you had to say to me, what's my favorite vehicle? It's hard to say, but I think, currently I own an 80 series Land Cruiser, which I'm rebuilding up with some new ideas and thoughts, because I love the 80 series. I've owned a few Troopies. They're a fantastic vehicle. I'm very fond of them. They're harder to get hold of now, but they really are great. So at the moment, I guess my 80 is my passion, because I really love the engine. It's got a 1HDT 6-cylinder diesel turbo motor. It's got diff locks front, center, and rear. And I developed a lot of products for the 80 series when I had my business in England to kit them out, because I thought it was a comfortable, safe, and very, very capable vehicle. And most vehicles can be made to do what you want.
Very true. I think overlanding vehicles these days, there are so many options for them, and so many ways that you can do it that's very specific to you, which everyone knows about. And I think I didn't know about this AT series. I think it's very cool. Are you documenting what you're doing? And
so I am going to be doing it. I actually bought it when I was living in England. And so I've had it a good few years, because I used it to prototype a lot of work and designs. But yes, I mean, I've used a lot of concepts and ideas when I built the ATs for people. But, most importantly, it's just a truck where I am going to film it and put it out there, just because it's different. It doesn't make it the best vehicle. It just makes it a vehicle that I'm very fond of. For personal reasons. And I think, when people are looking at vehicles, and I get asked all the time, what is the best vehicle? It isn't the best vehicle. There's a vehicle that suits your needs that you look at. And I think that's what people need to be, aware of. There's no vehicle that's going to tick all the boxes that you want it to do. But will it tick 80%? And if it's going to tick 80%, then that's good enough. And you can live with some
completely agree.
And the compromises they're going to be based on budget. They're going to be based on where you're traveling. They're going to be based on a number of parameters that I feel are very important for people to define before they go and choose a vehicle. It doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just what are the parameters, and now let's see what's the best fit.
I completely agree. And listen, Paul, I know that we both have a busy day ahead, and I want to thank you for this. I'm excited about this 80 series. I do hope that you put it up on your social media. I did watch today a nice little link I saw on your YouTube channel about some of the work that you've been doing and some of the different options. So if folks, if you haven't gone to have a look, go on to Paul Marsh on YouTube and subscribe and follow some of the things that are going on. I think it's quite informative and some good ideas. And Paul, thanks again, and we will talk again in a week or two and touch base on some areas that we will never have enough time to talk about.
Isn't that amazing? Well, listen, everyone, be safe. And thank you very much, Anton. It's always a pleasure to share and chat with you. You have great enthusiasm, great energy. And we share a passion, as we do with many of our listeners. So thank you all.
Go well, Paul.
Be safe.
Thanks a lot. Have a warm day. Bye-bye.
You too.